Hello, everyone. I'm Temi.
And I'm Toby.
And this is
Totally on
Brand.
brand. Hey, baby boo.
Hey, boo.
How are you now?
I'm good.
How's everything going?
It's going well.
I feel like we need more things to say in the beginning of the pod because it's like, oh, Tims, how are you? You're fine. I know I can see you. You're fine.
I saw you last week.
All right.
Mm.
And the week before.
Okay.
But how you doing?
I'm good.
Chilling?
I'm chilling. I'm happy that it is a relatively stress-free week. I'm in
I
Lagos
feel
this week.
lighter this week, actually.
I
I
don't know
must say. I
why.
don't know.
I don't know. I
Let's
mean,
just stay like that. Nigeria is going to come now and do what
at
it
some
does.
points. At some points. So, what are we here for today?
We're talking about something that I notice a lot of entrepreneurs do or don't talk about: money. How
Ooh.
to raise money for your business.
Mhm.
I find that in the last week alone, at least 4 people have come to ask me this
Mhm.
question, especially when I was announcing earlier in the year that I was expanding
Mhm.
or towards the end of last year. And everyone just keeps saying, how do you raise money? How do you raise money? And I'm like, I don't know. I raised.
Mhm.
And what was a common denominator for me is the fear, or there was a hesitation that people took whenever they wanted to ask me. And sometimes I look at them and I'm like, I get it because I'm that person and I'm still there. I'm still nervous. But yeah, I just find it strange how, not strange, I find it interesting that a lot of us are scared to talk money,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to business.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're talking about because I also don't like talking about money. And lots of people, especially when it comes to raising funds, I mean, if you're not like in a huge tech company that has raised this like huge amounts, people tend to like shy away from the question and then keep it close to their chest, like it's a top secret thing. So we wanted to bring you guys the goods today and just talk about how to raise funds, the different ways you can. And yeah, that's what we're doing.
It's funny because that's actually what held me back the longest. Like, I've always known I would do something or I would have a business, but I always thought, where am I going to get money from? I personally don't have any money to start
Mm.
a business. And I just kind of dumped the idea until I stumbled upon entrepreneurship. But I cannot wait to just you guys how we got, well, how I eventually got there personally. But yeah. What about you? Money. Does it scare you in business?
Like raising money or just talking about money?
Okay, both. Just talking about money
Now, not
make you
so much, but
uncomfortable.
raising money makes me so uncomfortable. I don't
Really?
even know where to start, to be
Have you
honest.
ever raised for your brand before?
No, I started with zero capital. I
Really?
just started.
Okay.
I was like, God would, by God's grace, everything will be okay. Which is
Yeah.
what, Nigerians love to say, by God's grace. Or like when people ask you, like when I ask other small businesses that, how are you going to raise? God will do it.
I don't like that thing.
Girl, you have to do it yourself.
Yes. Do you know, and that also makes it very mysterious. And we actually have to demystify the
Mm-hmm.
fact that yeah, obviously I believe in God and
Mm-hmm.
yes, by God's grace,
Mm-hmm.
but God also puts a lot of financial literacy in our
Mm-hmm.
lives so that we
Mm-hmm.
can actually understand how to do things and move forward and make things successful. And
Absolutely.
one thing everyone keeps saying is there's money in the world, or
Mm.
there's money to be collected, or there's
Mm-hmm.
people willing to give money, but where do I find these people? So we're going to tell you today.
Yeah, we are. And we also want to give you different options, the different ways you can do it. And because we love you guys so much, we have brought a very special guest to join us today in our tub set and our
Yep.
couch. And
I'm
we have the very
excited.
special Mr. Samuel Adelaja, who is our
Woohoo!
friend.
Yes.
And he has almost 2 decades of financial literacy and knowledge. He's worked in several organizations. He writes articles. He loves talking about money. He's going to demystify everything for you. And then obviously we are going to, discuss it more with you guys after the episode. So please welcome Mr. Samuel Adelaja. Thank you for joining us on the Tob podcast.
Hi,
Hey guys.
Samuel.
Thanks
How
for
are
having me.
you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for
I
having
wonder
me.
if someone is going to give us a little cheek today because he's so witty. So
Yeah.
Please
I'm
do,
looking-
please do. And we know you obviously, but our
Yes.
listeners and our watchers don't. So please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm Samuel Adelaja. I spent over 10 years, near enough 15 years in the financial sector until recently. I've worked across investment banking, private equity, and venture capital, and also done some fundraising and advisory work in my own personal capacity. Nowadays, I sell recharge cards.
Don't like. I
You see, the
really,
cheek has come
I
out
told you the
already.
cheek must come out. The cheek
I
must
love
come
it.
out.
Oh, we're so excited
Yeah.
to
Fun
learn. Yeah.
fact. Samuel and I used to live in the same building, and he was
Ooh.
literally very present when we started the house or when we were building the house. And he would
Mm-hmm.
always
Yeah.
pop down and say, "Guys, let's have a drink. Let's hang out." We're like, and he looks and he's like, "What are you people building? It looks good, but
Yeah.
can you hurry up so we can hang out?" Yeah, it was pretty cool. So he was
Amazing.
quite, it was nice to know that people that are coming on the pod now were there when even someone like me was starting her business out.
Full
So
circle
yeah,
moment.
I
I
know,
love it.
right?
Yeah.
So Samuel, every business needs money.
Yeah.
One of the things, whether you're launching, scaling, or just staying afloat, I learned the hard way. When I was starting, I actually had no idea. The idea came to me and I got stuck. I didn't know what to do. The only thing I could do in that very moment was to, let me put it this way, my first hire or the first person I knew I needed once the idea came to me was someone who was good with finance,
Yeah.
which is where my partner came in. And yes, he was my partner. We were just
Okay.
friends,
Okay.
Samuel. And I realized very quickly that having someone like him next to me would teach me very quickly what I needed to know. We needed to raise over 100 million at the time, and I had no clue what I was going to do. And very quickly, as soon as he came in, once he structured certain things for me, it gave me the confidence to actually start looking for a property.
Yeah.
And I guess the first question I want to ask you before I even go into detail as to how we structured my raising is, how do people, or how should people even view raising money? Why is money such a scary but available but this myth? Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, I think you said it the right way. I think demystifying the way we look at fundraising and capital in the first place is really, really important because financing is the lifeblood of any business. You can't do anything without money, unfortunately. You can have a really great plan and a really great idea that just doesn't come to fruition because you lack the backing.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, if you think about how you've got to how you should look at raising funds, the first thing I would probably say is, I think you mentioned a second ago about preparation. The
Hmm.
first thing would be, just as you can't walk into your exam hall and say, God has got me,
Right.
you've got to be prepared to walk into a room to ask somebody for money. And it comes with also being very humble and taking the emotion out of it, right? Because unfortunately, and I've done this, as I say, advising companies in my personal capacity. You walk in and think, well, I'm this person, I'm that person, so you should give me your time and listen to me when I talk. Actually, no, they're the ones with the capital.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? You need
So
their
money
money
is power after all.
in a manner of speaking, yeah. And you can have the best plan, but if you can't communicate it properly and bring them into your vision, remember, as a founder, you're sitting there with the whole plan. You understand where this is going. All you need is that money. And they're sitting there saying, I listen to 100 people say this every week,
Mm,
right? There's nothing special about this particular pitch unless you're able to communicate it to me properly.
wow. Okay.
So the preparedness is really important, and the humility is also really important.
Oh, wow. Preparedness and humility. I never even, I would have never associated the first steps to raising money be soft issues or in some intangible factors, which is so key because I like that.
Do you know what this makes me think of? So you know how popular shows like Dragon's Den
Yeah.
and what's the other one?
Shark
Shark
Tank.
Tank.
Shark Tank. All animals, funny,
Oh,
Mm.
interesting,
yeah,
like
that's true,
scary animals.
actually.
Scary
Yeah, so
animals,
scary
predators.
animals
Do you
because I
guys
guess
think
it's
that's on
scary.
purpose?
Yes, it must be. It has to be.
Shark,
Dragon.
Yeah,
dragon,
Yeah,
very
both
aggressive.
dumb. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
like
Aggressive.
apex predators. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that when I watch shows like that, it does a good job of sort of demystifying it because it actually shows you that you need to be prepared because you're pitching in front of
That's
Yeah.
investors.
actually true.
Yeah.
And of course it's entertaining as well. But then the humility aspect of it, which is why I was like, that's actually a good one because you're right. Investors see thousands of people who need money. So, what I want to know, and I guess what a lot of small business owners and startups want to know are if you put them into buckets for us, what types of financing are available to small businesses or people starting a business? I mean, I'm not a pro, but I know there's debt, I know there are loans, there's
Equity.
equity.
Mm-hmm. Crowdfunding.
yeah, like
Yeah,
even
there's so
asking,
many
can you tell
Yeah.
things.
us a few, or like what distinguishes them from each other?
Yeah, we can touch on that. And just to preface that, I will also say that depending on where you are in your business, not all capital is good capital.
Ooh,
Right? Not everything
okay.
Oh.
suits what you're trying to achieve at that particular
Okay.
point in time. But yeah, there are loads of ways to raise money. I mean, there's debt, as you mentioned, there's equity.
Mm-hmm.
Within that debt, there's venture debt that is,
Mm-hmm.
more applicable to earlier stage businesses that don't really have cash flows yet, where maybe you have revenues only, or you've raised some money from, pretty,
Mm-hmm.
established investors already. There's that as well. And then there's also crowdfunding, as you mentioned, Toby, and other forms like, say, supplier financing, vendor financing. So just getting credit from your
Yes.
suppliers.
Okay.
That's a form of capital as well that can fund your business plan. It's all
Yeah.
cash flows in the end.
Yeah.
Tobes, you have
So
experience with this, right?
yeah. So when is taking me back. When we were raising, it was probably the scariest part for
I
me.
can
I won't
imagine.
lie. I was really, really terrified to the idea of collecting people's money
Mm.
without even there's no proof of concept. I wasn't sure I was going to be successful, and yet I'm asking people for money. So, as a Black Nigerian child, money was not something that was taught to me in
Yeah.
a holistic fashion. And secondly, debt is not something that you ever want. Growing up, like there was a stigma with debt, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Of
guys
course, of
experienced
course.
that just
All of
growing
us
up
did,
in a
yeah.
Nigerian home.
Yeah.
Like it's not a nice thing. And then you go abroad and you study, and all of a sudden everyone is asking,
Do you
what's
want
your
an
credit?
overdraft? Oh, I
Do
was
you
even
want
gonna start with that.
overdraft?
Yeah.
You need a credit card
Yeah.
before you can buy a home. You
Credit
need
cards,
credit.
yeah, yeah.
It was so confusing to me. I avoided it. So I had no debt. I wasn't playing in a debt game. And then I was about to start a business. And then this topic comes up again. You need to collect somebody's money to start something. And put me in a state of anxiety. But like I said, the first thing I needed to do was I needed a partner. So a financial partner was my first equity partner. It was
Yeah.
very important for me because I think it would help the business sustain. So case study, we needed to borrow. I needed 100 million to kick the project off.
Yeah.
I didn't have it at the time. I personally didn't know a lot of people who had that kind of money lying around, or I didn't even know how to approach them. I wasn't prepared,
Yeah,
and
fair.
I wasn't yet humble. And it's not humility that there was something like I cannot humble myself. I just wasn't humble enough to say, please give me money. There's
Mm-hmm.
something very awkward about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? I don't know. So, what my financial partner did was, I think he performed magic, but I learned very quickly in that moment. He structured it. He said some were going to be equity and some would be debt. The debt was also categorized into leasing, some crowdfunding, some loans. What that does was it just reduced the cash exposure, which was what he was trying to explain to me. I didn't understand at the time, but now I'm a little bit of a pro. So imagine we took 50 million in cash through
Mm-hmm.
people. For everybody who gives me a loan,
Mhm.
everyone who wants to come in as equity, they must also allow debt.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? If I want to collect 10 million from you,
Mm-hmm.
if you're equity, if I'm offering you 5%,
Mm-hmm.
5 million of that must be equity and the remaining 5 has to be debt. And I don't know why he structured it that way, but he said it was much better because it gives me more cash while also reducing my equity
They actually give away.
giveaway.
Yeah,
So
exactly. You
that
want
was
to maintain
smart.
control of your business.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then the other debt, he got loan facilities. I had investors who had credit lines. So rather than collecting more money from them, we used their credit line to get some of our equipment and
Yeah.
assets and liabilities. So
Mm-hmm.
generators, speakers,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. Once again, reduced our cash exposure. And interestingly enough, I watched this process get closed in 8 weeks.
He's a miracle worker.
Yes,
Sounds like
but
it.
I think it was because of the way he broke it down. He then went ahead to say, for us to get this cash quicker, he was going to put a bunch of small investors in a consortium,
Okay.
in a company, which is sort of like crowdfunding,
Yeah.
and they would give you the money quicker. What do I mean? You want to raise $20,000 rather than going to one person and
smaller
pitching,
amount
pitching,
from several
pitching.
people.
Can I have 2K?
Yeah.
Can I have 2K?
Yeah.
The 2K I collect from you and Samuel is negligible. You will give it very quickly.
Yeah.
So we put all of those people in a consortium and I got my 20K in 2 weeks. because
Wow.
it's 222k.
Mm.
And then there's an equity allocated to that consortium. Whereas they're still seen as individuals, but from my business perspective, they're in one company.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So those were the tricks
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
used. I don't know how you analyzed that, what
And
you
also
thought
for
of
them,
that.
I mean, it's comfortable for them because rather than being 222k and having very little say in what happens, they come
Yes.
together and take, I think it's a 20% or
Or
something.
something, they
And
get a
that's a bigger
bigger.
block, and then
Yeah.
that they can be a little bit more vocal on, you know, how things are moving,
But what did you
governance.
think about how he broke down our entire like?
I think it makes sense because you don't want to give away too much of your business to begin with. You don't want to,
Mm.
you know, straight out the door, you've given out 60% of your business. You don't
Yeah.
have control anymore. You're an employee, and then somebody else comes with a better offer, and you just head off and say, yeah, you earn a better salary there. You still want to have enough skin in the game that your future rounds are coming, dilution will happen, and you still have majority of your business or a significant enough minority. So it
Yeah.
makes sense for him to have broken it up into debt and equity.
Mm-hmm.
Debt is a bit more pressure, of course. You know, you've
It
got
is.
interest you got to pay, you have
Mm.
a repayment period, you got penalties, you got these
Mm-hmm.
covenants, you got terms. But it does solve the problem of giving away too much equity. So
Yeah.
if the business can handle it, you know, you've written out a business plan, you know what you expect to make, give or
Mm-hmm.
take, all the macro stuff going on, then yeah, if the business can absorb the debt
Yes.
comfortably, then
Yes.
take the debt as well.
Yeah. So
And
yeah, that was what we
I
did.
think that that was such a creative way to break down your financing into different types.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so let's even flip the perspective a little bit. And I'm going to use my business as an example. So, and obviously, having spent time with friends who are starting businesses later in life or people who have, kind of coasted along with their business but haven't seen any significant growth.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we started with zero capital. So it was, I just woke up one day and decided to start a business, and then we just grew steadily.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, could we have grown exponentially? Probably, if I had had the know-how or the intelligence to raise money or even spoken to the right people. Now, what I heard you say, which was very important, was you had a partner, right? You had a
I had
partner
to.
who
Yes.
had the knowledge about financing. You had
Yes.
the vision and you wanted to execute. He had the knowledge about financing. And this is important for a lot of small businesses. We do want to do it alone. There's even, I'm now in my
Mm-hmm.
11th year of running a business, beginning to understand that I need to bring in a partner because I cannot do it alone. There's certain parts of tech that I need somebody to tell me about. There's certain parts
Mm-hmm.
about financing that I need people to tell me about. And this is my first business partnership. Like, I have never worked with somebody in, like, with equal stakes in
Mm.
something, right?
Oh, that's
And
yes.
letting go, and like you were saying, the fear of letting go of some of that ownership is what daunts a lot of
Yeah.
small businesses. And like,
Yes.
now I'm ready to raise funds, and it would be so amazing to actually see how many businesses will now start to restructure their thinking, because you did mention macro factors right now: inflation,
Yes.
the economy. It's hard. See, everybody just took
It's
a
gonna get
deep
Guys.
better.
breath in the
Huh?
It's gonna
studio.
get better. It's gonna get better.
I like
Okay.
that. I
It's
like
gonna stay
hope.
optimistic. Stay
Positivity.
optimistic.
The
Okay.
positivity
I
is
like
helping
that,
me
especially for
because,
someone in finance to say, "Don't worry, it'll
ooh,
get better." Okay, sorry,
okay.
Don't
Timmy,
quote
you
me
were
on that,
saying.
but
I mean, no, it was.
I'm joking.
No, but so it's about also reframing the way you think and letting go of some of that fear of even approaching the way you want to finance your business, because having partners brings a lot of value.
It
A
does.
lot. And even hearing you tell your story now, I'm like, okay, because, okay, I've gotten over the first hurdle of getting a partner. Now they come and tell me there's only one type of financing. No, you can mix them
Yeah,
all at
Yes.
once, right?
Yes.
yeah,
Find what works for you,
absolutely.
Yes.
try and also maintain the majority stake in your business. So you
Yes.
have to be creative. I like
Yes.
working with experts. Like, I like learning from people. And I think that's
Yes.
what a lot of small businesses need to adopt a bit.
I feel like that's also one of the things, like, that's also keeping a lot of our businesses in a micro
Yes.
or
they're
nano
not
level,
growing.
because we are not coming together with the top skill sets to work together. For
Yeah.
example, I would feel a little terrified, or in the past, to come to a Samuel and say, I want your services in my business, because for some reason I would think it's beneath you.
Yeah.
But it's what happens to a lot
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
us. We overthink
Yeah.
what value we're bringing to someone.
yeah,
But when you
exactly.
think about it, if I go to people, my peers, people with equal
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, mental standing, or
Mhm.
skill set, they would propel my business a lot faster than me
Yeah.
straddling alone, which is what the tech companies do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's value there. There's definitely value there. I mean, what you find is working with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are dreamers, right? And they possess a skill that I envy. I wish I had. Right? They just are. They have the the cojones, let me say, to
Mm-hmm.
go after their dream, to really push, sleepless nights, just bring it to fruition.
Mm.
Some of us have spent our careers in an office, just, kind of making things happen on the advisory side, or taking a position from an investment standpoint, but with the backing of, a balance sheet or institution behind us. And that
Mm.
comfort level is there. So having a dreamer is really, really important. Having somebody who gets the plan and sees the
Mm.
nuts and bolts from the very beginning, super important. But just as important, I would say, is also having somebody who is able to rein things in a little bit and go, if we go too far that way, that's the deep end, right? Do you want to
Yeah.
go
Mm.
into the deep end in month one, or
Yeah.
do you want
Mm.
to pace yourself a little bit? So do
Yeah.
you want, for you could have decided that you wanted to raise 500 million naira on day one. Do you need
Yes.
Mm.
500 right now?
Oh my God,
Can
that's
you
actually
come
Mm.
down to
happening to me
100?
right now.
Right. Can you
Mm.
pace yourself a
Yes.
little bit? Achieve some of the plan, then get that momentum and raise more.
Yeah.
Things like that, is where the experience of the guys who've actually done the finance stuff before will come in, I guess.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's actually
I
happening to
mean,
me right now
really?
because in raising for expansion, like I was willing to give equity because once again, I didn't want the
Mm.
debt on my head. And my financial partner was like, nope, you're
Mm,
going to sit through this debt because you're not dissolving a single unless we really have to. And I was resentful at first, but we're in it now. And
And
yeah,
it's
and he,
moving.
he just put his foot down. Um, and the second thing you mentioned in terms of staggering
yeah.
is also what we're doing, which I told you we didn't
Yeah.
close. We're
And
doing
you did
it
it in
like in
Yeah.
stages.
blocks.
Yeah.
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 I was also not happy to do that. I wanted a big reveal. And he was like, nope,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not with the
Yeah.
financing we're looking for. It's better if you stagger it. It's not wise to do it that way. So it's
That's
interesting you
exactly
touched
right.
on that.
That's exactly
And
right.
Um,
and you also mentioned something about like value, mutual value that you're bringing to the table. And it's interesting because I have a friend who's also in finance, and he said that sometimes investors actually want to add different types of businesses to their portfolio, right? So he
yes.
was like, I would happily invest in a creative agency because I just
Yes.
want to have a creative agency
You
in
don't
my
even want it
portfolio.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that another thing that we should talk about alongside humility is also confidence, because really you do need to have a certain level of look, I know that my business is valuable. And obviously, if you are running a business, you should think it's valuable and it offers value to
Yeah.
someone. So in approaching, especially friends, we're at a stage in our lives now where we're all professionals.
Right.
We have
Technically.
experience. So that I
Yes.
really think it's very, very highly doubtful that there's any one of my friends that I will approach that cannot give me value in their area of
Of
work or
expertise.
expertise.
Yeah.
Like I have friends in tech, okay, please come and teach me how to do
Yeah.
this, or like investing. So that initial fear
Yeah.
of asking someone, like it's
Makes
beneath,
sense.
yeah.
Um, question for you guys. So we're talking to small, medium businesses right now. Samuel, Temi, what is the first step to me wanting to raise money for a business? Because it is a fear factor that's killing a lot of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
What is that first step?
Okay.
Apart from humility and preparedness, actionable first step.
Okay. I would say preparedness, but I'll break it down.
Thank you.
If you don't mind me just
Absolutely.
explaining.
Please.
I would say understanding, first of all, how much you need to accomplish phase one,
Okay.
what you absolutely need. One thing I wanted to touch on before was that there's a push and pull factor there because the market will tell you what's available, right? Sometimes the market is white hot. Just before COVID, people were raising money like gangbusters, right?
Mm,
Valuations were going all over the place. They were crazy because money was available. There were dollars
Mm,
just in the market looking for a home.
mm,
So in that situation, it makes sense to take advantage of the market, right? To some extent, it doesn't just matter. It doesn't only matter, where you are in your life cycle. If the money is available at a very good valuation and you can use that money appropriately and it can actually help you scale or help you achieve your goals, take advantage of it. At the same time, when we speak about the preparedness point, I would say, first of all, how much you need to raise, what is objectively accomplishable in the short term for this money you want to raise, or even medium term. And then to your point about different investors wanting different portfolio
mm-hmm.
assets in their portfolio, do some research. Right, if I'm going to speak to 20 investors, when I was on the advisory side, again in my personal capacity for other businesses, I need to understand what's the investor strategy. Right? Does that guy want to do? Am I pitching a renewables business, and does
Mm-hmm.
that guy want renewables in his business? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I going to go in blind and just talk to him, and he says no, and then I don't understand, and I'm upset, and then I go to my pastor and say, "You told me this, you told me that." I hope I don't offend anyone. I'm Christian. My name is Samuel. But right, I mean, you got to do some research, understand the pools of capital you're going to approach, and then tailor your
Okay.
pitch to that particular conversation.
That's a
Absolutely.
good one. The tailor the
Absolutely.
pitch. I
Yeah,
like that.
you're going to have a dead conversation. You can't go in there and be giving blue sky scenario
And
that
then the
if
person
things
is,
go
yeah,
well, we're going to be $1 billion company.
yeah.
Right? What they want to see is this is how things are a sure banker. This is a sure bet. No risk here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Easily accomplishable goals. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to have an equity conversation, that's long-term capital. They're sharing
Mm,
the vision with me. They're sharing the opportunity with
I
me. Then I want to
see.
show them how big the opportunity can be.
Got
Right? So it's a
you.
different type of conversation you're having for different things.
I never even thought about that before, actually. Like, I just thought I need to raise money, but I never actually thought it's wise for you to match what you're looking for to where you are going
Absolutely.
So
as well.
that's actually my biggest struggle with raising funds for the company. And I think now this has given me a renewed sense of like action
Mm,
because I have decks and they are really tailored to the people I'm pitching them to. But the
mm.
problem was, and again, I think it was a bit of a lack of confidence or maybe like a couple of disappointments that made me stop. But it wasn't it wasn't like a sexy or like a hot sector to invest in. Like, why am I investing in an agency? Like, you guys are like, it
Oh,
was
I
very
see.
like
You think of.
tech. It was very like renewable energy. There was fashion. There was food. It was like we're not really investing in like service based companies
I
because
see.
But I think that it's important to keep trying and
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
continuing to tailor
Oh, yeah.
your decks, your
Yes.
pitch decks because yeah,
Do you know Ruth Afolabi online by any
name
chance? She
sounds
I know her
owns
familiar.
personally. Yeah.
yeah, she owns Magnify
Yeah.
Okay,
Collective.
okay, yes,
Yes.
I know her brand.
So interesting. Recently, she posted something about when she started Magnify Collective and how she needed money,
Mm-hmm.
and her business is non for profit. So
Mm.
there's already us. You're going to approach people to say, "I will make you money or I'll give you a return," and she's like, "I have nothing to give you back, but this is still a good idea." And she posted that her first big break was she sent an email to a guy who had just sold his company for 500 million to say, "Please, I need money to start this. This is my vision." And he wrote her a check the next day,
If you don't shoot, you don't
immediately.
score.
She said the next person, she sent a woman, a billionaire woman, who one of her reasons or mandates, you know how rich people have their impact driven
Yes,
side
yes,
of things.
yes,
So one of
yes.
the woman's, her business kind of matched what one of the woman's objectives with
Mm-hmm.
her impact and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
philanthropy. And she sent an email to the woman, and the woman funded them. The money she gave them was so big, they got an office and they kicked off their entire business. And that's what started Magnify Collective. No
Is that
returns.
woman single?
She's still giving out money. I just want to know, like, what's her
I'm just
email
But like
wondering.
she
address?
actually posted it recently and it was so
Yeah,
inspiring because I also realized there are other types of money
yeah,
that is actually
Yeah.
the people don't even want back. I
yeah,
never even knew that existed before.
yeah,
Grant
yeah,
funding, absolutely.
yeah,
There's grant
Okay.
funding out there that it just like you said, it aligns with the goal.
yeah.
They
It's
have a
their
pool of capital
CSR.
available. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Are
value
there
for them
different
outside of a
types of
return.
grants as well?
Oof, I
Wow.
couldn't go too deep into that. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And then grant is just kind of funding where someone believes in what you're doing and gives it to you, or how do
So,
we define grant
okay.
funding?
So there are different types of grants.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I guess in my recent like exposure to like grants, that the grants that are mixed with with loan. So it's grants and it's a loan. It's a percentage of the money is a grant, percentage is a loan.
Okay.
There are grants that are based on milestone achievements. So, for example, the Tony
Okay.
Elumelu Foundation grant, it's given to you, but it's given to you in stages,
I
and you have to
see.
achieve a certain milestone before you get the next. Because like we're giving you money because we believe in your vision, you've pitched and
Mm,
everything, but we need to see that you're using the money appropriately. So
yes.
as far as I know, and then of course there are grants that are just like I would say those ones are more tied to CSR. It's like I'm
Yes.
just giving you money because you need it
We should
for
probably do some research on the
yeah.
different grants available and
Yes,
share with
yes.
the
With
people
our
as a
listeners, yeah,
resource. That
for
would be
sure.
quite good because I would love to know
Mm-hmm.
the different grants
Mm-hmm.
available.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you okay, this is preparedness,
Humility.
humility, match,
Tailoring your yeah.
tailoring your
Mm-hmm.
any other
Yeah.
tips?
I mean, and on the humility point, I would say just being dogged as well, right? I mean, remember when we were all
Mm.
looking for jobs at some point outside
Mm.
of uni and stuff? you sent your CV to billions of people. Like
Mm.
applying for jobs as a 9 to 5 in itself. You were just shooting your CV across, and you get rejected and rejected. I mean, we all did, right? You get rejected and
Did
rejected
we
and
were
rejected.
dogged? Yeah.
Eventually, nobody remembers the rejections because then you get this, and then it just kicks off from there,
Yeah.
and
This is
Yeah.
true.
Very
people keep
true.
forgetting about the days you're sitting there with nothing to do, just
This
hoping
is
something would
true.
happen, right?
Yeah.
This is true.
Same thing with fundraising. Right? I mean,
Mm.
for whatever reason, people may decide not to look into your opportunity too closely, too deeply. Maybe it doesn't align with their strategy. Maybe the amount of capital they have remaining is kind of already spoken for, just kind of dwindling. Maybe the market is not where they want it to be. Naira can be doing all kinds of cartwheels. You just don't know, right? But you keep on going, and at some point, somebody writes your check, and that becomes the testimony that you've spoken about two of them
Mm.
or three of them already today.
Yeah,
Nobody remembers the other stuff,
it's
right?
Fair
So
true.
enough.
just
That's true.
It's so true.
be humble and be dogged. Just keep
Yeah.
on going, keep on pushing.
Yeah.
But
Humility and
intellectually,
doggedness.
intelligently, yeah.
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 Do you, the tech raising, it gives me a headache. I'll just be hearing millions of dollars,
Yeah.
billions of dollars, which is where I know you sit.
Yeah.
That's where your strength is. Now, I'm a small business. I literally want just a very small fraction of that. Do I
Yeah.
have to go through that process, or who do I approach to get my smaller amount of money?
Are there VCs
For
that
small
exist that are for
businesses.
small amounts?
Absolutely.
I want
There are local
50
I
million
want
VCs
to
as
get
naira.
well.
5
I
million
want 5 million. I want 50
pounds.
million naira. I
Yeah.
want 25 million naira. I want 100, those type
I
of
want
amounts.
10 million naira.
Are there
Yeah.
like mini? Yeah.
There are VCs that are invested in very, very early stage businesses. Shout out Arua and shout out Aggressive.
Okay,
Okay.
Um,
that's a
Okay.
good
Okay.
one. That's
yeah,
actually true.
absolutely.
Arrow and
These pools of
aggressive.
capital exist. I'm probably doing a disservice to some others that I'm not thinking about off the top of my head right now, but they definitely
We can
exist.
get a list from you after this. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. $25,000, $50,000 checks exist for these very, very early stage ideas,
Okay.
and they
Are there
come with a lot of support.
$5,000 checks?
Probably, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are.
The
The Angel
support
Business
is
Network in
key. The
Nigeria.
support is key as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Mm,
because sometimes early stage startups need advisory. How do we even
yes.
use this money? How do we
Yes.
make sure this money is going to bring?
I feel like we keep talking about businesses that have clarity. What
Mhm.
about the girl who wants to start her fashion business and she knows that she wants just one collection to start and she actually just needs maybe $10,000 to start, or let's even make it a naira thing. She needs 10 million. She needs to buy a couple of sewing machines. She's going to be very good at what
Yeah,
she's doing.
yeah.
She just needs that initial
Mhm.
10
Mhm.
million. Should she go to the bank? Should she crowdfund? I feel like a VC might be too many steps for her to go through to get just a mere 10 million naira. What can we advise her to do?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of the processes outside of grant funding and crowdsourcing look the same. So for her, I would suggest thinking about crowdfunding. I
Mm,
would suggest that, or as I mentioned a second ago, the Lagos Angel Business Network. I think that's
okay.
so that as well as a number of people who can write first loss checks. Just go and try it out, see what happens.
Okay.
Mm.
Um, but I think generally with no matter how small the check is, it's risk that an investor is taking.
Okay.
And if that's an institutional investor, it's most likely going to involve some level of due diligence, some level of understanding corporate governance that's in place already or what needs to be put in place, some level of investment committee where they need to go back to their people who are a little removed from the situation and say, here's what we're thinking about doing. Do you all agree? And then, so on and so forth. The process kind of takes shape from there. But
Yeah.
for somebody who, like you say, is like a seamstress, she's got a fashion line in mind. She believes she's creative and has this special talent she wants to explore. Yeah, I would say, friends and family is also available, but also essentially crowdfunding
Crowdfunding.
and then getting to that first stage where she can now go and speak to an institution.
What about a movie? I want to shoot a movie.
Mhm.
I need to raise production funds. Would that go through a VC or would that be crowdfunding as well? Or would that be people who are interested in that industry?
I hope I'm not getting this wrong because I actually think Filmhouse has a fund.
Oh, so brands in that
Yeah,
industry.
I believe Filmhouse actually had. This was a couple
But
of years ago. I had that
apart from
conversation.
Filmhouse, where would a brand like that go through? I'm
So
wondering. I'm trying to think through the different facets of businesses
Yeah.
and how they would kind of approach it.
So you know what? This brings me to actually a very interesting type of offering that I've really been coming across very often now. It's accelerators. right? So
Okay.
there are actually, and now that I'm thinking about it, I probably should also find a list because there are several accelerators in the creative, entertainment, um, and design industry where they would, they select based on criteria, you go through an accelerator program, and then
Mm-hmm.
at the end, there's funding. So
Mm-hmm.
that's also one because what that does is it also increases your capacity, which then allows you to thrive, obviously, and then you get
Mm.
Absolutely.
funding at the end. So there are accelerator programs, a
I
lot of
like
them
that.
actually
I like that.
Absolutely.
in Nigeria right now because I've seen a lot of them. Yeah, so we can find a list as
Yes.
well,
What I'm
Absolutely.
getting
accelerators. Yeah.
from this, or what we're saying, is that depending on the business type, the stage of your
Mhm.
business,
Mhm.
the kind of entrepreneur you are,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and the industry you're in,
Mhm.
you might have to explore the best type of funding for
For
you.
Yeah.
Basically,
you.
there's no
Yeah.
one size, there's no one path
Yeah.
to
Absolutely
it
right.
at all.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from
And you had
this.
mentioned something really interesting earlier on where you said that not all capital is good capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
So
talk
we
about that
wanted to
one.
talk about good money versus bad money
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what your thoughts are on that as well.
Yeah. And by the way, I should just say, because again, I'm doing a disservice. If your business is renewables, shout out Delta 40 Venture Studio.
I like this. I like all these
Keep the
names
shout
because
outs.
no,
We
I
do
Exactly.
need
love
them.
it. We
We
Exactly.
need
actually
like a
need to
resource
share with.
library.
Yeah, of
Do you
Yeah.
know
course.
a lot of us don't know? Imagine um people would say I'm doing well in hospitality and I don't know any of the brands. I know
It's
Ingressive,
God.
but and it's good. But like it shows me once again why this knowledge gaps that we're experiencing in
Yeah.
society, we have to start closing
We
them.
Yeah.
do.
And I feel like
We
that's what's
do.
going to help us build the middle class, which is essentially going to help us build this nation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously they don't fit into the buckets that we're as we're putting them. There's no evil capital out there, and there's no kind of angelic capital out there. But there's what suits you for the period you are in your business life cycle. If you are starting out, you need money that's, as I think I mentioned before, flexible. Right? You
Okay.
need investors that are going to be with you and guide you, provide some level of advice, some level of, so let's say, what's the word? Mentorship as well.
Okay.
You're most likely going to get that by raising equity capital from a venture studio accelerator program, something. And that's because they're really with you for the journey, right? They are long term in nature. They will take some ownership, but likely will be the best kind of capital is willing to be flexible around that in order to accommodate you and to accommodate the time you need to achieve phase one, two, and three of your business plan. For you at that time, I wouldn't say necessarily debt is the right option because
Mm.
then you're beholden to a lender who needs you to pay back. He wants you to go and bring your mother's house and your father's house as collateral. You have this fixed interest rate that most of the time they want you to pay in cash, which is
Mm-hmm.
sucking away from the money you can actually use to grow your business. So in that scenario, I would say bad capital is debt.
Mm-hmm.
Like in good capital would be the person who's really willing to be on that journey
Yeah.
with you. Now, further along in your business life cycle, where you're looking to expand, but you have a core business that is already generating cash, profitable and so on. That makes sense because you don't necessarily want to give away too much equity in order
Yeah,
to
you
pursue
said.
this expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You still need to maintain control. So depending on the terms of the debt, the devil's always in the detail.
Mm.
The interest rates, the repayment terms,
Mm-hmm.
whatever prepayment penalties there are,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the financial covenants, the security you need, then you got to look at that stuff. But if everything is kosher, then yeah, then that would make more sense for you in that situation.
I like the simple breakdown. Like you need to know, like we said earlier, you need to know where your business is, what stage it's in, what your goals are, what you're willing to give away, what you can afford to give away, so that you know the difference between bad and good money. Now, working with a lot of small businesses and seeing I'll use loans as an example, right? Seeing all the loan portfolios that banks are now coming up with for SMEs or whatever, there is a common thread running through the reason why a lot of these small businesses cannot access these loans. And the main issue, which I'm going to call a barrier, is the fact that they don't, one, have any records that they've kept of their cash flow. Two, they are informal, so they are not even formalized in terms of they're not registered, they're not
Yeah,
paying taxes. And three, they don't have a good history. Well, I guess it's the same as the first point, where they're not giving the bank confidence that they're going to pay back the loan. So this is a barrier. So one of the things we were interested in are what are some of the barriers to even getting financing that a lot of businesses face?
I think having let's say books in order. Corporate governance is
Mhm.
really, really important if you're going to raise money from anybody, because this person is
Yes.
not your family member.
Yeah.
Yes.
They don't know where you're going
Not
to run off
doing you
to.
a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's not a favor. You're risking their capital. So they need
Yeah.
to see that there are structures in place in your company, which is why people are so focused on, again, further down the life cycle of your business. What's your board? Who's on your board? What's your board constituted of?
Mm.
Mm.
Right. Yeah. Who are your bankers? Who are your auditors?
Mhm.
A lot of the stuff gives you comfort that, okay, it's unlikely this person's going to run away.
Mm.
And this is why a lot of the foreign capital that comes in will tell you need a big four auditor, PwC, KP, those
Yeah,
Deloitte, those
too.
guys, EY. Um, you can raise money without necessarily having collateral. You can raise even debt funding without
Yes.
collateral.
Yeah.
You can raise without
Mm-hmm.
having a lot of the obstacles and barriers that would prevent you from getting bank funding, and that's in the form of venture debt. Shout out to LG Capital and FCMB. So they exist for they've this combination that they've created exists to offer venture debt to
What did you
Nigerian
call that again?
companies.
Venture.
Venture debt.
Okay.
So TLG Capital, the first company that I
Mm.
worked for a long, long time
Mm.
ago, has set up a vehicle with FCMB
Okay.
to focus on Nigerian businesses, early stage businesses that
Okay.
require venture debt, which is whereby you don't necessarily need to be cash flow generative, you don't
Okay.
necessarily need to be profitable.
Okay.
They're willing to take that risk earlier on. You don't need to bring collateral. Yeah, so that would be interesting. And actually, a lot of people look to do that when they've just raised an equity round, for example. To
Yeah.
the point you made before, sometimes you don't want to
Making.
give away too much
Too
equity.
much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've raised an equity round for some credible investors. You then have a small component of like a third of it or something. You then go to
Yeah.
a venture debt provider and ask for that. And
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, they're
Makes
willing
so
to
much
play.
sense. Another barrier I would say to raising fund is the entrepreneur themselves.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
lot of people, in my experience, I would
Mm.
be around people and they would say, I want to raise money. And I ask, where's your proposal? Where's your plan? And I know I invest in small businesses and I know categorically I will not invest in this person
Absolutely.
because I don't see the right work ethic. I don't see their grit and
Mm.
tenacity to kind of
Mm.
go through from beginning to end. So for me, if I invest as well, it's very key to invest in somebody that I know is going to take this to the very end and hit the objective or attempt to hit the objective they have said they would hit. So that's another barrier I notice.
Yeah.
When people invest in me, I remember an investor saying to me, shout out to SNY. They said to me when I was freaking out about repaying their money that they're not actually investing in the business yet, that they were investing in me as a person, and you can see the work ethic and the hard work. And I didn't even know that was something that people did, that they
Absolutely.
just invest in the person
So
over the
I've
idea.
turned down money for that.
Really?
Yes, I don't. The pressure became too much.
Oh,
Yeah, so
interesting.
which is interesting because you will have people who see your vision and hear you speak and see what you put out and they're
Mhm.
like, I like you. I
Yes.
want to invest in you.
Yes.
I immediately started thinking, but what about my team members? And what about the people in the organization? And what
Oh,
about the volatility of the economy? And what about having a kid? And what about, because at the time I had a 3-year-old and I was like, yeah, we've had a conversation, but it's interesting because today, if somebody said they wanted to invest in me, I'll be like, please,
Mhm. Yeah.
oh,
I'm
that is
amazing.
such an
But
interesting
I,
way
I
to look
imagine,
at
I imagine
it.
that, but it still boils down to the person, right? So that
Mm,
person must have thought, oh, what a shame. What a shame,
because it was you.
Yeah,
They don't. But your team could go and come.
they, which is part of my problem. Keep going and
Yeah.
coming. But, but I love that. And I think
Yeah.
that you have to also be mentally prepared to receive that kind of
I will.
investment.
Yeah, I can imagine. And in your experience, why do investors invest in people? What is it about that kind of in- investment that makes it different?
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I put my investor hat back on for a second, I think that where I see that potential in somebody, when I see that tenacity, again, the market will move against you.
Mm.
Things will happen. We live in a volatile environment. And I see somebody who's just, the word we used before was dogged. That kind of devil
Mm.
may cry attitude, like nobody's going to stop me from reaching this goal,
Absolutely.
right?
Mm.
That person, even if this particular idea, and also they also show that they have that entrepreneurial gift.
Mm.
Mm.
Even if this one doesn't work out, they'll have another idea, and I'm willing to back them there as
Ooh,
well.
do you
Mm.
see that? So
This is
you
the
still
thing.
give.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
that's
So you're investing in
amazing.
that person and their ability to push,
Yeah.
but also, okay, if this doesn't work out, they're less likely to kind of sit there, fetal position, but okay, we go again, right? and that kind of energy you want around.
That is so
Absolutely. I love that
interesting.
so
So it
much.
means when people are even investing in you, sometimes they've actually even factored in a potential failure or setback
Absolutely,
and ready to kind of go with you. That's actually
absolutely,
Mm,
so
absolutely,
encouraging.
very, very.
Yeah, I
absolutely.
never thought about that. If someone
Mm.
invests in me and I fail, I will freak out really badly.
Oh, that was my fear, but
Don't go
yeah, I
lose
Yeah.
their
guess it's
money. I
different
mean,
now. Yeah. Oh wow.
um, and then we already spoke about alternatives to
Yeah, we
raising
did.
fund. Is there anything you would like to share with us that we have not just thought about, even us as two business women, in terms of like money, or even the listeners? Like, people are really scared of money,
yeah,
Sam.
yeah.
Like, they are terrified.
It's like going into a job interview again. People sit there and you only want to put your best foot forward, and you get nervous about what if I see something wrong? What if I got to hide this underperformance in that department or in that particular part of my business?
Mm,
Be completely forthright, right? Be completely upfront, and I think that if you're able to communicate what you've learned from whatever failures you've seen in the past, and you're able to show how you've kind of structured around it. I don't mean financially engineering anything,
Mm.
but just here's how we avoid that pothole in the future. Here's what we have understood and how we're looking to tackle this particular point going forward. I think more often than not, you'll find people if you're having a proper conversation. I think more often than not, you'll find people who are very understanding and want to be again with you on this journey because they know that this person is not going to take my money and start telling me stories.
mm.
This person's
That's very
likely going to
true.
be we're going to be there together and leverage me as well, right? For that, somebody who's willing to come and say, hey, we're thinking about this, and not just midnight phone call saying, please, please, I'm desperate, but being able to
Mm.
front run a lot of these things, right? So even when you're looking to raise money, you don't wait till you've got 5 naira left in the bank.
Mm,
You have a plan for the
Forward
year,
mm,
thinking.
mm,
and you
mm,
see exactly. You got to be able to kind of see the forest through the trees or for the trees, right? And then
mm.
decide, okay, this is what I've got to try and figure out, and this is how much I'm just normal business planning that any CEO at the highest level will have to do. You
Yeah.
also have to be doing at the beginning too.
Mm.
Is JV a form of, or
Strategic
a
partnerships.
strategic way of getting money or raising money? Do you partner with a money person and you know that your finance is sorted, but they're your partner? Is that, it just popped to my head and I wanted to
Mm.
ask, is that a style?
So like a strategic partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like more often than not, thinking about somebody else who's in an adjacent industry or a similar industry and
Or they
come
have an
together to leverage each other
interest.
because there will be an interest as well in the JV.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
they have nothing to do with the business. It's not something they're used to. Their main goal is to bring the money, but they also want to be part of it without being a part of it. I don't know if you've ever come across that situation before.
So I've seen situations where, so if it's not somebody who's operationally involved, for example, like
Not operational.
a seamstress and the designer
Yeah.
is now leveraging the tailor and the workmanship of the seamstress, and the seamstress is leveraging the creativity of the. That's one form of like JV or strategic
Mm-hmm.
partnership that you just de-risk the capital you need to put in. So
Okay.
rather than putting in 100 million naira yourself, you put in 50 million naira and you get access to all this stuff without having to buy
Got
equipment
you.
yourself.
Okay.
That's one.
That's one.
Now there's also incubators, for example, are the guys who you
Mm.
partner with. They'll bring the money. They're not necessarily operational in nature or
That's
part
the
of the
one I
business,
was wondering.
but they'll give you a whole bunch of back end stuff, right? So like
Right.
HR, which you need,
Right.
accounting, financial controller. Um,
So they're called incubators.
Incubators do
Mm.
that. So they'll
Okay.
give you the first check as well,
Mhm.
50K,
Mhm.
25K,
Mhm.
and then they'll probably even give you office space.
Mhm.
All right. So
Okay.
your team can congregate in one place every day.
Got you.
They give you access to their backend. So they'll have a shared backend that they have with all their portfolio companies.
Do you have
Makes
any in
sense.
mind?
Venture Studio, as I mentioned.
Okay.
Also, off the top of my head, I I can't remember any off the top of my head, but I should also mention Zrosk because Zrosk is a little bit further down in the let's say in the investment cycle, but are willing to offer a lot of services and a lot of assistance to their portfolio companies.
Okay.
Definitely.
We'll get a list
We will.
and we'll
Oh yeah.
share.
Oh yeah.
This is good. So yeah,
Very helpful.
I think one of the biggest
Question.
things Samuel and Timmy and myself have shared today is raising money should not be scary. Think of it from the perspective of what stage your business is in, what type of investor you need, how much money you need, and how often or how quickly or how long term you need such amount of money as well. So I hope this episode has been good for you. It's definitely helped me.
Yeah, I mean, and the things that resonated the most with me really were the soft ones, right? Because a lot of people do a lot of very good pitching and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, preparing, but you also need to be dogged, which means you can't let the disappointments or the rejection stop you or derail you. You also, I think, need to do a lot of research, guys. Like there,
Hundred
there, there
percent.
are there are just go on Google incubators, accelerators, VC funds, early stage angel investors. Just
Literally.
Google in Nigeria. There are so many companies. Like Samuel said, they have money. The money needs a home.
Yes.
So
I
do
like
your
that.
research. Do your research.
One thing I want to quickly touch on, though, that I feel like a lot of businesses, in my experience, also go through is try to be intentional. If you don't know the answer, get a financial partner, but zero, 100% of zero is zero.
Mm,
So a lot of people have this obsession with equity
mm,
where they're like, oh, I want 70% of my business. I don't
mm,
want to give you anything. And it's like, if it's zero, the 70% you're holding on to is still zero. So remember, it's about what equity share you want, who your investor profile in, and what growth plan you have. And not
absolutely.
holding on to things that, not holding on to the definition of things,
Mm.
instead the practicality and the actuality of how they're going to help your business grow.
And talk to your friends, guys. You will have friends who are really good.
Yes.
They have a lot of knowledge. They've experienced it. Don't like keep your problems to yourselves. They always
Yes.
say a problem shared is a problem solved. So
Very
just
clear.
talk about it with your friends. Do we have time for questions?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
Okay.
guys, it's time for our favorite segment. It's the Q&A segment where we have questions from you guys and we want Sam to help us answer a couple. I'll take the first one. When do you realize you need external funding for your business?
Good question. I think the first thing you got to do is have a bulletproof, fortified business plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And within that business plan, you have a sense of the amount of capital you need to actually achieve it. And you obviously know how much you have willing to risk in the business itself. I think the delta is where you know that you need external funding.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Why bulletproof?
Well, bulletproof in as far as the again preparedness that's gone into actually
Gotcha.
creating it. So
Okay.
you're leaving as little to chance as possible because there's so much chance out there that's outside
Mm-hmm.
of your control.
Gotcha. Okay. I like this question a lot because I can even learn from it. How do you balance business growth while managing loan repayments?
This is exactly what we're talking about at the beginning, which is about how you actually decide what kind of capital to take.
Yeah.
Because, again, with your plan, you have a sense of if you're going after expansion aggressively or
Mm.
if you need to fortify your position, if you need to solidify your position.
Gotcha.
So if I need my core business to work, I need to sweat this thing and get as much cash and profitability out of it at the expense of necessarily gunning for growth,
Yep.
then take on debt if you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just sweat the asset or sweat whatever it is that you're trying to generate capital from. And in that way, you have there's an implicit balance there, right? Because it's that okay, I can't chase growth now, but maybe the growth out there is not sufficient, not is not let's say material enough right now in this particular environment that we're in a few years maybe, but for now we want to start slow. We want to really push this core business to the max that it can deliver to us. Growth, debt capital where available, fantastic. Don't give up control just yet.
Yes.
And on the flip side, of course, if you think that, for example, let's think of an example of service-based business.
Yeah.
Service-based business, there's very little IP. There's very little intellectual property that you own yourself that's different to everybody else.
Mm.
The differentiator is probably how quickly you can get market share.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
spread as much as possible. Just not throw money out, but spend a lot, invest a lot in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to achieve growth. You need to get scale.
Mm-hmm.
You need long-term capital to do that with you because there's a lot of risk to actually going down that path.
Yeah. Quick one on this. Very. If if we're not making revenue, but our loan repayments are due, what should people do?
Ooh.
It's a situation you don't want to find yourself,
Yes.
but just in
Absolutely.
case you do find
Yeah.
And it
yourself in
happens,
there,
right?
and it
Yeah.
happens all the
Yeah.
time, what can
Unfortunately,
we
yeah.
advise people to do in that situation? A lot of people run away, shut down,
Yeah.
crumble.
So where we find ourselves in that position, it's unlikely you got a loan from a lender who was expecting cash interest payments and cash repayments before you had any revenue or did not
Fair
anticipate any
enough.
revenue coming in. So, where you're in that position, something went wrong.
Okay.
And unfortunately, this is where the hard graft comes in because you can try to fix things as much as possible, but you've also got to be really upfront in communicating with these lenders in good time, not
Mm,
turning up a day before repayment and
And
saying,
saying,
I don't
yeah,
have it.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
weeping and wailing and tying a rubber
Mm,
and it's a very
Yeah.
unemotional thing, right? You got to,
mm,
Yeah.
with time, saying things are trending this way.
mm,
Mm-hmm.
Can we have a conversation about potentially restructuring this debt?
mm.
Got you. So
Right?
debt restructure
Yeah,
should be your goal in advance.
very well timed. You cannot turn up in the last minute and then
And
hope
you will
something's
have a
going to happen.
sense that, things are
Yeah,
going
is
left.
that
Yeah.
avoidance?
Yes,
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
why I
It's
was trying
that,
to address it to make sure
maybe
if people have
maybe a
avoidance.
miracle will happen at
Because
the
even
end.
personal debt,
Yeah.
like we have a thing when people borrow money from you, like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to chase you.
yeah,
Come and tell me well in
yeah,
advance.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
I was asking it from a
yeah,
business perspective
Yeah.
because
yeah.
if it happens personally, it must happen
A lot.
business
Absolutely right.
wise
Yes,
as
it
well.
does.
So
Exactly.
in case you find yourself in that situation, confront it. Like don't be avoidant.
It's
Yeah.
also the
Confront it.
responsible thing to do to your
It
investor.
is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
maturity in that. Then
It
yeah.
is.
Thank
Thank you so much. It's
you.
been great.
It's been a real
It's been
pleasure, guys. Thanks so
amazing.
much for
Thank
Yes,
having me.
thank
you.
you.
And I feel like this episode is going to produce a lot of resources.
I
It's going to help a lot of
think we
people. I
yes,
would
we're
also like
definitely
to
going to be
say
reaching
that
out.
if anybody, another thing that small businesses could use is people who offer advisory services on how to build business plans and how to get your books in order.
Yes,
That would be a really good business opportunity for some people. You
that
can help
makes
other
sense.
small businesses.
If
Right.
your business is directly related to anything we're talking on the about on the episode, please reach out so we can share it
Absolutely.
with our listeners.
Yes.
And plug in everyone. We must all be successful. We need the middle
Yes,
class
yes.
to
Yes.
rise. We
Yes.
actually
Yes.
really
we
need the
Yes.
middle class
do.
to rise.
100%.
Okay, thank you. It was great.
Thank you for
Thank you,
hanging out with
Samuel.
Thanks
us,
so much.
Samuel. And thank you, everyone, for listening and watching today. It has been a treat. Don't forget to listen, watch, share, subscribe, and also tune in for our next episode next week. Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye bye.